Hello everybody, my name is He Xiaoyun and I'm a doctoral candidate with Indiana University School of Law. My research focus is China's legal system and judicial selection. Before 2004, I was a judge in a provincial high court in People's Republic of China. Thanks to the invitation of Indiana University Kelley School of Business, it is my pleasure to be here to discuss with you China's legal profession. To understand China's legal profession is helpful to people who are interested in entering China's legal service market and also to those people who are doing business internationally or in China. In today's presentation, I'm going to focus on three questions. First, China's lawyers' qualification and foreign lawyer practice. Second, judges' qualification and selection. And lastly, I'm going to discuss with you China's judicial independence through a case study. I hope you enjoy the class.
Now let's get started with the introduction to legal profession in China. Before we do anything in this class, I would like you to spend a minute to take a look at the questions listed here. See if you can answer those questions or try to answer them. Upon completion of this class, you are expected to find all the answers. The first three questions listed here are on lawyer profession, the qualification of lawyers, and foreign lawyer practice. The other two questions are about judges, the qualification of becoming a judge, and the selection of a judge. Lawyers in China. The lawyer profession was established after 1979 in China. The first non-state-owned partnership law firm was founded only after 1996. See, there is some very short history for China's lawyer profession. Until October 2008, that's the latest number I've got from Ministry of Justice. There are 140,000 lawyers in China, which means there are only one lawyer in per 10,000 population. This is not a big number at all. Then, who can practice law in China? Of course, it's a China licensed lawyer. The qualification requirement for getting the Chinese license is first, you must graduate with bachelor's degree in any major. Second, you must pass the state uniform judicial examination. For taking this state uniform judicial examination, Chinese nationality is required. This means that foreign citizens are excluded from taking the uniform judicial examination and becoming a China licensed lawyer. The second step of becoming a lawyer is to finish a one-year internship in a Chinese law firm, of course, and maintain good conduct at the same time. Here, when we talk about foreign citizens are excluded to take the uniform judicial exam, we do not refer to citizens from Hong Kong, Macao, and Taiwan. Citizens from Hong Kong and Macau are eligible to take China's uniform judicial examination. Upon passing the exam and finish the one-year internship, they can be awarded lawyer's license in China. And the latest update is from April 2008. Taiwan citizens are eligible to take the uniform judicial examination and get lawyer's license in China from 2008, which is very good news for Taiwan citizens, because Taiwan has a very similar civil law system, and it's like more likely for Taiwanese to pass the exam than compared with Hong Kong and Macao citizens. The reason we say that is for Hong Kong and Macao test takers, they have a very low passing rate at around 3%. We can see here from 2004 to 2007, there were totally about 1,300 test takers to take the uniform judicial examination, but only 3% of them passed the exam. Then you might want to know, what is this uniform judicial examination? State uniform judicial examination was called lawyer's qualification test before 2001. From 2001, it became the qualification test for becoming lawyers and judges. The exam was held by Ministry of Justice once a year since 2002. The exam is basically a two-day examination divided into 4 sections. It's like the New York bar exam. It's like morning section and afternoon section for 2 days. The subjects that is tested in this uniform judicial examination include 14 subjects, which are constitutional law, criminal law, civil law, administrative law, and relative procedure law, civil procedure law, criminal procedure law. But interestingly, China does test legal history in the uniform judicial examination. The passing rate is around 10% until 2007. Here we have this nice chart to show you how this examination, how the passing rate was from 2004 to 2007. We can see here the first bar is Hong Kong and Macao test takers passing rate, which is relatively lower. And from 2004, we see this bar here, from 2004 to 2005 to 2006. Each year the passing rate was around 10% and a little bit higher each year, but this last bar is 2007, and the passing rate is much higher. It's around 23%. Next, we are going to talk about foreign law firms. If foreign citizens are not eligible to take China's uniform judicial examination, can they provide legal service in any form? Since July 1992, China opened its legal markets to overseas offices. The Ministry of Justice has approved 92 law firms from 11 countries and 28 Hong Kong law firms. In June 2000, Ministry of Justice again granted another 11 foreign law firms to establish their branch agencies in China. However, foreign lawyers are prohibited from operating full legal services. So the answer to this question, can foreign lawyers practice law in China, is no. According to the Regulation on Administration of Foreign Law Firms Representative Office in China, foreign law firms may offer consulting services on very limited issues. Here are 2 examples. Legislation of the country or region where the lawyers are licensed and international conventions and practices. This service is really very limited because a foreign lawyer can only provide consulting services regarding the laws and practice in the country where the lawyer has obtained a license. Like he can consulting a case on British law, or the lawyer can provide service to a Chinese client who has a lawsuit in New York if he is New York licensed. That's basically the meaning of what kind of legal service they can provide. The lawyer's profession is regulated by law of lawyers, and this law has been amended recently. We called it the 2007 Law of Lawyers. This new law has afforded more protection for the attorney-client relationship, and it raised legal ethics standards, which used to be very general, and the requirements are tend to be vague, but it's more clear now. The new law of lawyers also clarified lawyer professional liability and allowed solo practice. This is for the first time in China's legal history that we have solo practice law firms. Next, we are going to move on to judge profession. Who can become a judge? Here on the screen, I found this nice newspaper article published, we can see here, in 1998, January 2nd, 1998. This article triggered a nationwide debate on judges' competence. At that time, retired Army officers made up a large percentage of the judges in the courts at each level, and few people dared to raise this sensitive issue. Professor He Weifang was then a law professor in School of Law of Beijing University. He criticized this common practice of awarding judgeships to retired Army officers. So here this article was written by Professor He Weifang, named Demobilized Soldiers in the Courts. I still remember his questioning in this article. He said he was asking whether it was appropriate for military men with no legal training to be assigned to work as judges. Would anyone assign military men with no medical training to work as doctors? Professor He's article in Southern Weekend was the earliest voice on this issue, on the qualification of becoming judges. This article, however, was criticized by People's Liberation Army, and it triggered nationwide debate. But the National Liberation Army published an article asking that why cannot retired army men join the law courts. It asked to point to the military's contribution to the country, and it also put stress and pressure on the Southern Weekend, who published Professor He's article, and under heavy pressure, Southern Weekend published an apology declaring that the People's Liberation Army has made major contributions at each stage of socialist construction. That debate was not a fair debate, I would say, because Professor He was never given a chance to rebut those critics. For his best interests, according to Southern Weekend, they refused to publish a rebuttal which Professor He has drafted. Then we might want to know how military personnel became judges. This is all about history. From 1960 to 1979, China's legal system was destroyed basically because of the Cultural Revolution and other political issues. Military personnel was sent to the courts and took over the judicial responsibilities. The current legal system was rebuilt after 1979. However, the situation has been changed after the promulgation of the first Judicial Law in 1995 and its amendment in 2001. Here is a nice picture. We can see some judges being awarded the National Outstanding Judge of the Year 2005 here. Until that time, 50% of judges have obtained undergraduate degree, which means many of the judges graduated from a college with a law degree, and some of them may obtained undergraduate degree while they were working for the court. So 50% of the judges has undergraduate degree. Here we can see the numbers of judges in China. In 2007, in China we have 200,000 judges. Compare this with 140,000 lawyers, which means in China we have more judges than lawyers. The education background of judges. Until May the 1980s, the majority of Chinese judges were former military personnel, we already know that, with little formal education. In 2003, 30% of judges had undergraduate degree, and in 2005, 50% of the judges have gained undergraduate degree, which is progress. The Judges Law, the 1995 Judges Law. The 1995 Judges Law established uniform qualification for judges. It required the selection of new judges to go through public examination. The Supreme Court held a court-administered judicial selection exam for court personnel to be appointed to judgeship for the first time. I would call this judicial selection internal selection system because the selection of judges is from court personnel. So it's whoever already worked with the court can be appointed to judgeship through this examination, even though this public examination is a progress, but the selection is internal. But this law has been amended. In 2001, the Judges Law was amended. It set up the judicial qualification standard. The standard turned out to be much higher because the law requires anybody to be appointed judgeship to go through this state uniform judicial examination. This is the same exam for lawyers and judges. This examination is a significant progress in China's judicial selection because it will not only improve the quality of the judicial personnel, but also contribute to the formation of a contingent of legal professionals and to the achievement of the uniformity of law through the administration of justice. How to become a judge. So the first step, passed uniform judicial examination. The second, nominated by the party or the court It depends on what kind of judgeship position he is to be appointed. If it's like president or vice president position, then he must be nominated by the party. If it's associate judge or judge, the court must appointed him in order to become a judge. And the next step is appointed by the Congress. So after the nomination, the candidate is going to be discussed by the local Congress, and the Congress is going to issue a formal appointment of the judge. This procedure, I would call it a relatively open selection, because this uniform judicial examination will allow people who do not previously work in a court to become a judge. A good example would be that from 2000 to around 2007, there were a total of 22 lawyers and law professors were selected to work with the Supreme People's Court. But problems remained. The first problem is the privilege. Presidents and vice presidents of all courts may be selected without qualification test as ordinary judges. Why? According to Article 12 of Judges Law, presidents or vice presidents can be selected from other persons who are best qualified for the post. This means even though the appointment of a judge must go through the uniform judicial examination, the vice president and president may not, because they can be selected from other persons who are best qualified for the post. Some scholars criticized this practice as layman least professionals, because virtually the president can be any person with or without legal training or legal education background, but judges must go through this examination. We tend to have a higher qualification requirements for judges than for the presidents. The second issue is judicial independence. China's leaders have embraced the rule of law as the most efficient means of regulating society, but a central requirement has not been resolved: whether the ruling Communist Party truly intends to allow an independent judiciary. China's judicial system is hard to say. It's hard to say that it is an independent system. Courts have been always subject to supervision of different authorities like the party, the government, Congress, etc. The reality of judicial independence can be illustrated by the following case, which is a very influential case. We call it the Seed case. Here, this nice picture, a young lady whose name is Li Huijuan, graduated from China University of Political Science and Law. She was a sitting judge with Luoyang Intermediate Court in 2003. She presided over a civil case which became very controversial in late 2003. The seed case. The contract dispute arose from the delivery of corn seeds between a seed producer and a buyer. The issue was the application of law on how the damage was to be calculated. Shall the court apply market price for the corn seed based on People's Republic of China state law, or shall the court follow the government set price range set forth by Henan Province People's Congress, the local legislative body? Judge Li rejected the pricing provisions of the local regulations on the ground that they conflicted with the national seed law. Li was accused of encroaching upon the legislative authority by engaging in illegal judicial review and therefore violating the law. The legislative body, Henan Province Congress, also demanded that the court to remove Judge Li from her post. Li was discharged from her position as an associate judge. She stayed at home for several months. She did not know what kind of punishment was going to follow. In May 2004, faced with mounting media outcry over the harshness of its decision, the court informed Judge Li to come back to work. Li was reinstated. Judge Li went back to work after this we call it accident or affair. In many countries, I would say, a judge tossing out a lower level law would not draw media attention at all. But in China, what Li has considered judicial common sense was considered a judicial revolt by the People's Congress of Henan Province. But I don't want to discuss judicial review here because that's totally another issue to be discussed by constitutional law scholars. Here, what really surprised me was the limits on judicial autonomy in China and the political retribution faced by judges. This case almost ended Judge Li's judicial career. But this case also revealed the rising influence of legal reformers. There were chains of changes. One of the busiest courts in Beijing announced in November 2005 that it would not punish judges if a ruling was later deemed politically or legally wrong. This is a progress. Finally, I would like to sum up my presentation. 3 points we want to remember from this presentation. First, China has been making progresses in building competent legal profession. Second, there are still problems remain. Third, the legal profession is waiting for further reforms of China's political system. Now, can you answer the questions for me? First, who can practice law in China? Chinese citizens or Hong Kong, Macao, Taiwan citizens with lawyer's license. What are the requirements of becoming a lawyer? Bachelor's degree, passing the bar, 1-year internship. Are foreign lawyers allowed to practice law in China? No. Who can become judges? Chinese citizens passing the bar. What is the procedure of becoming a judge? Nominated by the party or a court, then appointed by the Congress. Okay, thank you for attending this session. Bye-bye.